HaKadosh Boker Or Masechet Nazir Daf Daled Amud Aleph 481. We're just going to start in Daf Gimel Amud Bet again very quickly, just the Mishnah. We said that there are three different aspects of a Nazir. You have to remember, number one, Tumat Met. You're not supposed to become Tameh Met. Number two, which means to purify yourself to a dead body, to a deceased body, or even be in the same vicinity or the same room, okay, or a building. Now there's going to be number two, if you remember, which was, besides Tumat Met, Gilu Acharosh, you're not allowed to cut your hair. Number three is going to be the drinking of anything to do with wine or the grapes. So now a person comes and he says, he becomes a Nazir from the pits or from the peels, right? Or from that he's not going to cut his hair. He becomes a Nazir, and everything, that means even though he did not accept upon himself only one of the Yisurim, which is either to not cut his hair, or not to come and to become from a met, or not to drink wine, he becomes completely impurified. What does that mean? He becomes completely a Nazir. He's not allowed to impurify himself, he's not allowed to cut his hair, and he's not allowed to do all these things. Says the Gemara, Matnitim de la Rabbi Shimon. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Shimon. The time was we learned in a Braita. Rabbi Shimon says, Eno chayavat shidor mikulam. Says Shitat Rabbi Shimon, if you want to become a Nazir, you have to prohibit yourself upon yourself everything. If you prohibit upon yourself everything, then you become a Nazir. But if you only do half, so for example, I'm not going to come and I'm not going to, no, that's not a Nazir. That is Shitat Rabbi Shimon. The Rabbanan say, even if you're going to prohibit yourself one of these three things, have a Nazir. That is a Nazir. My time, since it says Belashon Kolel, which means it's like a Kelal. What's the Kelal? The Kelal is a general rule. Anybody that's going to come and prohibit upon himself, then it says Mechartzanim v'adzag. Chartzanim v'adzag is the perat. Remember that the perat is the details, the specifics. You're going to the specifics. What are the specifics? From the peels or from the pits? Chartzanim v'adzag. So therefore, the fact that it first did a kelal and then afterwards a perat, we're going to know that if you only mention one of these surim, you have to mention everything. You have to mention everything, right? Completely. Okay, that's what it says. But when you have right kelal ufrat, right, perat, so you have to do everything. And therefore, when you're going to be mekabel al tzmicha nezirut, it's not only just on wine; it has to be on everything as a whole. The Rabbanan savre, Rabbanan hold. My tama, what's the reasoning why? According to them, even if you do not accept upon yourself everything, it's still going to be a problem. He says, Rabbanan, my tama, yazid. Right? Why does it have an extra word, miyayin v'shechad yazid? Right? We already know that you're not allowed to have, right, wine. So why does it say miyayin v'shechad yazid? Comes to teach you that even if you only segregate yourself from the wine, you already become a nazir. Okay, you're a nazir gamur completely. Okay, because if you already had the pasuk afterwards, what's Nikol saying? Why do we have to say miyayin v'shechad yazid? Why would it say that? It says no. That comes to teach you that on anything you become, right, a nazir. The Rabbi Shimon Nami, Rabbi Shimon, it's written active miyayin v'shechad yazid. So he says, Haomi Baile, he needs it for what? Le'esor yen mitzvah ki yen reshut, to prohibit yayin of a mitzvah like yayin of reshut. What does that mean? You could have an excuse that it's yayin of what? Of a mitzvah. Well, I'm going to have a mitzvah now. It's kiddush, it's havdalah, it's what? No. Yayin mitzvah is exactly like yayin of reshut. There's no difference. Once a person is a nazir, nazir is a nazir. Don't come with excuses and oh, there's a siyum masechet, there's a sudat mitzvah, this is a this is a that. So what is that? Kiddush Havdalah. That's going to be kiddush and havdalah. Now we're on Daled Amud Aleph on the top. He says, 1 second, you're going to tell me now that this is going to be kiddush havdalah? You're obligated from the Torah to do kiddush and havdalah ala yain, right? And that's why the Nazirut is not going to chal if you're going to prohibit upon yourself wine of kiddush and havdalah. Right? Because he comes and he says this is only going to be chiyuv of a midrabanan. So for sure the Nazirut is going to be chal. Which means like this. We have to do kiddush and avdalah. Right? Zachor et yom hashava lekadesho. We learn from there that you have to be mekadesho. You have to sanctify the Shabbat. Right? But the chiyuv is only kachobi dvarim. The rabbis that were the ones that came and instituted to do it on the kiddush alayayin. It's not mina Torah, and to do it the avdalah. Anyway, there's a machloket. It's a mina Torah or midrabanan. But according to everybody, lavdil alayayin is going to be again takana chachamim. So therefore, if it's only going to be the rabbanan, you are already again you're obligated mina Torah to separate yourself. So now you have to do it on the line. Don't have to do it on the line. Which one? But rather that which Rava comes and he says, what was the case exactly that we're talking about that it prohibits a yain mitzvah? He says, Shavua she'eshteh v'chazar ve'amar hareni nazir. You know what the case is? That you have a mitzvah to drink wine from the Torah, and then you come and you prohibit yourself that? It cannot be kiddush. Because again, right, according to the majority of the opinions, if you right now come in the middle of Friday night and you say, right, Mekadesh Shabbat in the middle of Amidah, and you had that in mind, you fulfilled your mitzvah taseh deoraita of kiddush in the nighttime, which means that it lowers your level to a drabbanan. Right now, why? Because again, the entire concept of doing it al yain, right, was only with drabbanan. Same thing with havdalah. Right, the person comes. You're right. There's a takana chachamim. You have to do why? Because all the important things we always do it on wine. Right, brit milah alayayin. Right, your pidyon ben alayayin. You're going to do the sheva berachot chatuna alayah. Everything's always on the yain, but it's only going to be takana chachamim. So he says, what happens if a person comes and he makes a shavua? I'm going to drink wine. So now he has a mitzvah to fulfill his shavua, and right after doing that, he comes and he says, "Areni nazir." Now it's a problem. Because he just made a shavua that he has to drink wine, which means that he's got a biblical obligation to drink wine. 2 minutes later, he comes and he says, Hareni Nazir. Now he has a biblical obligation not to drink wine. So now you have the problem. So Atya Nezirut Chayla la Shavua. Now comes the Nezirut, and it's going to be Chala la Shavua, and now it's going to prohibit on the wine. So now here you have a case where you have a mitzvah to drink wine, to be Mekayem your Shavua, but then you have an Averah, right? You just made yourself into a Nazir. Now you're not allowed to drink the wine. That's the case where you could have a case where you have a mitzvah to drink wine, and an averah, you're not allowed to drink wine. So he says, okay, fine. V'rabbanan, well, obviously you could do a tarat in the daimon and everything, 100%. Or you could get out of the nezirut as well, right? V'rabbanan, I mean the rabbis also. He says the rabbis also need this pasuk to come and to prohibit yain mitzvah, just like yain and reshut, which means just like Rabbi Shimon. So therefore, how do the rabbis come and they learn an extra din? The extra din is the fact that these words were extra. So therefore, you can learn that the second that you prohibit upon yourself 1 out of the 3, you're completely prohibited in Nazirut. You become a Nazir Gamur because it was extra. The concept of, right, when it says Miyayin v'shechar yazir, that was extra. He says, 1 second, Miyayin v'shechar yazir was coming to teach you that even if you have a mitzvah to drink wine, and now you become a Nazir, you're not allowed to drink the wine. So if so, he says, Le makra, the pasuk should have said, Miyayin yazir, meaning only from wine you should become Nazir. Mai v'shechar, what does it mean now when it says the word v'shechar? Shema mina tartes. It's going to teach you 2 halachot. Halacha number 1, that even if you have a mitzvah to drink the wine and then you become a Nazir, you're not allowed to drink the wine. And mitzvah number 2 also, that even if you only obligated yourself that you're going to refrain from wine, you become a Nazir Gamur, and you're obligated to fulfill all the mitzvot of Nazirut, which means you're not allowed to cut your hair, you're not allowed to go to the cemetery, v'chule, v'chule. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon, and according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, Hainu Tama de Ketav v'shechar. That's the reasoning why it's written Shechar. Le'alufe Shechar Shechar le'mikdash. To learn a Gezerah Shavah from the word Shechar, Shechar Shechar for the Bet HaMikdash. Tichtiv says in the pasuk. What does it mean that you're not allowed to drink? Whether it's going to be yain v'shechar, right? You and your children when they come to the Olam Moed, magabe nazir, just like a legabe nazir. Yain hu delitzad, it's only permitted to drink wine. Aval shar mashkin, but any other intoxicating liquids, lo, there's no prohibition. Gabe hamikdash nami yain hu delitzad. Aval shar mashkin mishtakrin, no. It's only going to be asur yain, but not anything else. Which means that it comes out of chidush. Right? A Kohen, he cannot come and have a glass of wine with you for a l'chaim. But if you give him whiskey or vodka, all of a sudden it's okay. That's what it comes out. That's what Rabbi Shimon is saying. But this argues on Rabbi Yehuda. La'puke de Rabbi Yehuda. This argues on Rabbi Yehuda. The time was learned in a Braita. Rabbi Yehuda says, Achal devela keilit. If a Kohen comes and he's going to eat dried figs, which come from Keilah, which is basically a place, which basically they come and they intoxicate. The shatat dvash, and he drinks, right, the honey. Here means that it's dvash, which is actually going to be from beer, right, which with water, right, for a very long time. Shatat dvash, vechalav, and also, right, milk. Right? Okay, this is it's or. It's not all of them together, right? In all these cases. So he comes and he says, V'nichnas l'migdash, and he comes into the Bet HaMikdash, chayav. He's going to be obligated in Malkut. Why is he going to be obligated in Malkut? Because he came into the Bet HaMikdash when he's drunk. What does that mean? They're learning the word v'shechar literally. Meaning we learn yain. Yain is obviously yain. There's nothing to talk about. But what about any other intoxicating liquids? So here it says miyain v'shechar. Miyain v'shechar means, right, that we're going to have, whether it's going to be the yain or the shechar, right? Any intoxicating liquids. That is shitat Rabbi Yehuda, which means if you're going to come, which one? Can you understand? No, because what they're trying to learn is that since it's the yain v'shechar al teshtal v'nechaitach, just like by the nazir, it's only yain, right? A nazir could have a vodka. It's only yain that he's not allowed to have, or anything which comes from grape. So too, the exact same thing, right? And that's what we're trying to say here. So it comes out.
Can you say that it only includes beer and not all the other?
No, for sure no. Because it says yain, right? And shechar is drinks. No. Shechar means anything which is shichrut, anything which intoxicates. Lav davka beer. Nowadays, you're right. We have a common thing that shechar is always beer, right? But no, anything which intoxicates, right?
Is there a level of intoxication?
Anything which intoxicates, anything which has any type of intoxicating liquid. Okay, v'nichnas l'migdash, he comes into the migdash, he's going to be chayav. That is shita of Rabbi Yehuda. If you want, you could answer Rabbi Shimon, let isur chal isur. So according to Rabbi Shimon, there is no isur chal isur, which means that the word v'shechar is teaching you that the isur nezirut is chal isur acher. Okay, remember, isur chal isur means that you already have one prohibition, and then if you're going to do something else, now you have two prohibitions. It's one isur, so it's going to be chal on another isur. So he comes and he says, according to Shittat Rabbi Shimon, he doesn't hold of isur chal isur, and therefore, if there's no chal isur chal isur, right, that means if it's already going to be prohibited, it cannot be prohibited twice. So therefore, the word shechar is teaching you the isur nezirut is going to be chal al isur acher. It cannot be on the same thing. Tanya was learned in the Braita. Rabbi Shimon omer ochel nevela b'yom kippurim patur. If you came and you ate on Kippur, but you ate a nevela on Kippur, non-kosher on Kippur. So he comes and he says, you're going to be patur from the chatat. And the reason why is because since the nevela was prohibited even before Kippur, there's no isur of Yom Kippur which is going to be chal on it, and therefore you're not going to be chayav a korban. And therefore the same thing. Here, the extra word of shechar is teaching us to do with Nazirut another halacha, that a Nazir which is going to drink wine is going to be a sur, be sur nosaf, you're going to be lokeh pa'amayim, you're going to get twice lashes, right? Because you have yain and then you have shechar. But according to Rabbanan, right, that they're going to come and they're going to say, aktiv etzot mikol asher yaseh migef yain mechasanim adzad. So therefore, from there, if you remember, we already learned that according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, the fact that it had a kelalu perat, right, you had a kelalu frat, what does it mean? You had a kilal, a general rule, right, which is mikol asher, right, everything which comes from the word yain, and then you had the pirat, the specifics, which is chartzanim v'adzag, the peels and the pits. So therefore, we learned over there that what? That according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, in such a case, right, it's going to be the what? That it's going to be on everything, right? That he's going to be noder al kol diktuken zirut. How's the Rabbanan going to come and explain mechartzanim v'adzag? So the rabbis are going to tell you, Hatam limed al isure nazir shemitztarfim ze im ze lekazayit. That pasuk, when it says chartzanim ve'adzag, it's teaching you a chidush. What is a chidush? Right? Usually a nazir is not going to be chayav unless you're going to eat a kazayit. The rabbis learn from here that everything is mitztaref to a kazayit. What does that mean? If you had half a kazayit of the peels and half a kazayit of the pits, right, which basically the pits of the grapes, which technically they're still edible, right? So what happens? They're mitztarfim, and therefore you're going to be chayav. Because you just had a kazait, right? Because you add them up, you combine them. And that is a chidush, because usually maybe you would say, no, you need a full kazait, right? And that's by anything, by the way. Right? Whenever a person is going to be a chayav, it's only when he eats a kazait. If a person eats a pig, he's over on chetzi shiur asuming a Torah. But he's not chayav malkut. Until when? Until he eats a kazait. When a person eats a kazait, that's when he's chayav. Okay? Very important. 28 grams, right? Like a zait. 28 grams. Okay? So now, says the Gemara, right? Rabbi Shimon, right? Let siruf, right? So according to Shtat Rabbi Shimon, you're right. There's no such thing as siruf. Why? The time we learned in a Braita, Rabbi Shimon says, Kol shehu lemakot, right? Anything is going to be for the chiyuv malakot. Meaning, according to Shtat Rabbi Shimon, you had a little bit of wine, right, of grapes here, right? You had a little bit of grapes, malakot. You don't need a kazait. So now it makes sense why he cannot use the chartzanim ve'adzag to do it siruf to a kazait, because you don't need a kazait, according to the Shtat Rabbi Shimon. The second a person is a nazir, and he comes and he takes a third of a kazait, a half of a kazait, doesn't matter what, kol shehu. He takes a small amount, and he comes and he eats a grape, right? What do you give him? Yeah, lashes, right? You give it to him on the head. Why do you give it to him? At the end of the day, that's it. That's Shitat Rabbi Shimon. So why do they mention then the kazait? Lo amru kazait el yan korban. The korban is if you eat a kazait. But to do the punishment, even kol do. So therefore it comes out again one more time, right? What? The opposite, to bring a korban. To bring a korban. Okay, so one more time, just to have to recap. If you remember, we already came and we said that it comes out that there's going to be a machloke between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. According to Rabbi Shimon, if you want to become a Nazir, you have to prohibit yourself on all three. According to Rabbanan, no. The second you accept upon yourself one, you've had it. Where do they learn it from? So according to Rabbi Shimon, the fact that it says klal ufrat, you have to accept upon yourself everything to become Isur. According to the rabbis, it was extra yain v'shechar, right? Nazir. Since it's an extra pasuk, it's coming to teach you that the second that you prohibit yourself even from wine on itself, it's already enough to become a Nazir, even though you didn't accept upon yourself everything else. Ask the Gemara, according to Rabbi Shimon, it's also written, yain v'shechar yazir. Says no, right? Yain mitzvah. So right, the yain mitzvah is like yain reshut, which means that you're not going to come and say, it's a mitzvah to drink wine, so now I could actually drink wine. No. The Gemara asks, what are you talking about yain mitzvah? What yain mitzvah? It's kiddush v'avdalah, that's yain mitzvah. That's mina Torah. You're already exempt after you've already done the kiddush and avdalah even without yain. It's like chachamim yain. So no, you made a shivua and then you became a nazir. So therefore, since you made a shivua that you're going to drink wine, now you have a mitzvah midoraita to drink wine. Then you did what? You made yourself into a nazir. You have an avirah that you're not allowed to drink wine. So the rabbis, what do they do now with this concept of mitzvah kiyan reshut? So he says, yeah, but why does it say yan v'shechar? The fact that it says yan v'shechar, shechar is extra. Since shechar is extra, it's teaching you two different halachot. Number one, to do with that the mitzvah is like the reshut, and number two also that yain also, right, is going to be the exact same that we learned before. Yain v'shechar yazid, that the second you accept upon yourself even one of them, everything, you become a Nazir, kolel for everything. Then we came and we said, according to Shtat Rabbi Shimon, when it says shechar, we already know that it's going to teach you shechar to do with the Torah, which means that when you come into the Bet HaMikdash and you drank shechar, right, it's only going to be wine. It's not going to be shechar, which means, mamash, imagine, you come into the Bet HaMikdash, you're intoxicated. You drank whiskey, you drank the best whiskey, Blue Label, you were drinking, you came to the next minyan on Shabbat, and you were just drinking and drinking and drinking, and now what? Right? Now all of a sudden you come to the Bet HaMikdash. You're chayav. Right? Why are you going to be chayav? Only according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Shittat Rabbi Shimon, the fact that it says yain v'shechar, just like the Nazir is yain, so too the Bet HaMikdash is going to be only yain, not shechar, not any other intoxicating liquid. But according to Shittat Rabbi Yehuda, he comes and he says that if you came into the Bet HaMikdash, you're going to be chayav. Then we give another answer in order to understand what does the extra word of shechar come to teach you. According to Rabbi Shimon, there's no isur chalal isur, as we already brought down to do with kippur, that a person is going to eat a nevelah on kippur, he's going to be patur, because anyway the nevelah was already prohibited from before kippur. So therefore, even though now he's also eating on kippur, which in itself is an avirah, he's still going to be patur. And according to Shitat Rabbanan, since it's written Mikol Asher Yaseh Migefnei Yain, they come and they tell you what are you going to do with that, because that was what the klal ufrat of Rabbi Shimon. He says, no, that's to do with siruf. What does it mean siruf? If you come and you're going to eat half a kazait of peels and half a kazait of pits, it's going to be mitzaref for a kazait, you're going to be chayav. According to Rabbi Shimon, you don't need that, because according to Rabbi Shimon, you don't need siruf in order to be chayav makot. You only need siruf to do with the kazait, to do with the korban, that you're going to have to bring a korban. Until here we are in the Mishnah. So it says the Mishnah on Daled Amud Aleph, Hareni keshimshon. If a person comes and he says he's like Shimshon, or keben Manoach, or like the son Manoach, which is obviously Shimshon, keba'al Delila, or like the husband of Delila. Delila was the wife of Shimshon, right? So an or kemisha akad daltot azah, right? The one that he uprooted the gates of Gaza, right, of Azah. Or kemisha nikru plishtim etinav, or like the person that they come and they plucked out his eyes. Remember, they plucked out the eyes of Shimshon. Harez nazim Shimshon. He becomes a nazir like Shimshon. Remember, Shimshon was a nazir olam, as a nazir forever. Remember, stam nazirut is 30 days. Nazir Shimshon is a nazir forever. So there's a big difference between nazirut Shimshon and a regular nazir. Says the Gemara, why do I need all these cases? We said if a person says he's going to become like Shimshon, or like the son of Manoach, or like the husband of Delilah, or like the one that uprooted the doors of Gaza, or like the one that they plucked out his eyes. Why do we need so many cases? So says Gemara Tzlicha, you need all of them. Why? Diamar was if he said Ani Keshimshon. I would have thought to say the Shimshon Achrina. We're talking about maybe another Shimshon. We're not talking about Shimshon the Nazir, the famous Shimshon, right? Kamash Malan comes teach you Keben Manoach, right? Vitana Keben Manoach. If you only taught to Keben Manoach, how would you thought to say Ikadmit Kerehachi? There's a person that his name is Ben Manoach, not that he's the son of Manoach. His name is Ben Manoach. Okay, just like Ben Mergi. It does not mean that he's the son of Mergi. It just means that's a name. It becomes the name of the person. So he comes and he says, right? Ikadmit Kerehachi. So Kamashmalan comes teach you, then no. Kebal Delila, what does it mean now? Kebal Delila. And that's why each one was, again, these are things which are actually cases that happened to him, and therefore that's why we know exactly who we're referring to. Next Mishnah. Ma ben Nazir Olam le Nazir Shimshon. What's the difference between a Nazir Olam and Nazir Shimshon? It's the same thing. It says no. Nazir Olam ichbit se'aro mekel batar. You know what happens? If right now you have a Nazir Olam, which means he became a Nazir forever, what happens? If right now it's too heavy, his hair is very, very heavy, you know what he's allowed to do? He could come and he could lighten his hair with a tar. He could cut his hair a little bit. He could do a trim. Then he has to bring 3 animals, a chatat ulan shlamim, every single time when he comes and he cuts his hair. Okay? Just like a nazir that purifies himself, he has to do. If he becomes tameh, then he korban tumah. He has to be a regular korban. Nazir Shimshon, right? Ichbit saro eno mekel, v'nitma eno mekel. Nazir Shimshon can never cut his hair. That means Nazir Shimshon is even worse than Nazir Olam. Regular Nazirut is 30 days. A person could wait 30 days to take a haircut, right? Some people do it all the time, right? But here we're talking about now Nazir Olam. Nazir Olam is forever. But if it becomes too heavy, you could trim. Then you have Nazir Shimshon. Nazir Shimshon is even worse. You can never do that. And you do not bring a korban of Tum'ah. Says the Gemara, Nazir Olam. Who's talking about Nazir Olam now? We never knew that there was even a concept of Nazir Olam. The previous Mishnah spoke about Nazir Shimshon, right? And we spoke about Nazirut in the beginning of the Nazir. But who's talking about now Nazir Olam? So says the Gemara, we're lacking part of the Mishnah. This is what it means to say. Haomer hareni Nazir Olam. A person that comes and he says he's hareni Nazir Olam, hareni Nazir Olam, he becomes a Nazir Olam. So says the Gemara, okay, so ma ben Nazir Olam, Nazir Shimshon, but 1 second. We just learned in the previous Mishnah, Nazir Shimshon. Our Mishnah just says if you say you're going to become Nazir Olam, you become Nazir Olam. What's the difference between Nazir Olam and Nazir Shimshon? Nazir Olam ichbit zaro memekel batar umevi shosh be'emo v'nitma v'korban tumah. Nazir Shimshon ichbit zaro memekel batar. So that's our Mishnah. Daled Amud Bet ve'enu mevi korban tumah. Okay, Daled Amud Bet 4b says the Gemara korban hu delo ma'iti. You're not going to bring the korban if you become tameh. Aval Nazirut chayil aleh. But the Yisur Nazirut is going to be chal, which means that it's a sur for him to become tamemet. Only if he becomes tameh, don't bring a korban, right? But you're not allowed to become tamemet. So mani matnitin, who's our Mishnah? Like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Shimon. It's not like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya was learned to the Braita. Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, Nazir Shimshon mutalo letameh lemitim. According to Shtat Rabbi Yehuda, a Nazir Shimshon is allowed to become metameh metim. Sheker matzinu Shimshon. Shimshon, he killed, you know how many thousands he killed? Shimshon for sure was metameh metim. He was just killing everybody all day. He was killing all the Plishtim. That was his job, right? Okay, you're right. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Haomer Nazir Shimshon lo Omer klum. It never came out of his mouth. It came through the mouth of the malach. The malach was the one that was kove'ah, that he became a Nazir, not himself. When Shimshon was born, he said, I'm going to become a Nazir Shimshon. The malach said he's going to become a Nazir for the rest of his life. Right? A birth. From birth, he became a Nazir. Right? That's what happened. But the malach was the one that did it. So Mani, so says the Gemara, one second. If it's going to be like Rabbi Yehuda, he said, Hamar afilu lechatchila. He says you're allowed to become metameh metim, right? Even lechatchila. Right? It's mashma, if you only become tameh, don't bring a korban. Mashma, you're not allowed to become tameh lechatchila. And if it's going to be shitat Rabbi Shimon, he says there's no such thing as Nazirut Bichlal. Because Shimshon was a special case of Nazirut that it came to the mouth of Malach, not of the human being. So answers the Gemara Leolam Rabbi Yudahi. Really, Be'emet, this is shitat Rabbi Yudah. The idea that Katani Gabe Nazir Olam Nitzma, but now that we just learned to do with Nazir Olam, if they become Tameh, Tananami Gabe Nazir Shimshon Im Nitzma. Meaning, to do with the Nazir Olam, I didn't need to tell you the concept of the Im Nitma. So to Gabe Nazir Shimshon, we also brought down Im Nitma, even though we go like Rabbi Yehuda, which is basically the what? He's allowed to become a Tameh. Right? That's the reason why he doesn't bring a korban, because he's allowed to become a tameh. Not that it's only lechatchila b'divad. No. Be'emet, according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, a Nazir Shimshon is allowed to become a tameh. And the proof is from Shimshon, that he came Shimshon a Gibor, that he came and he killed all the people, and he was mitameh. But that's why he doesn't bring a korban. So why do we say he doesn't bring a korban? Obviously, he doesn't. He's allowed to become mitameh. Says no. The fact by Nazir Olam we had to bring down about mitameh that you bring a korban. So brought down Nazir Shimshon that you don't have to bring a korban. So says the Gemara. So lema plukta dehani tanai kami palge. Why don't we say that there's a machloket between these tanaim? The Tanam we learned in a braita. Or here it should be the Tanya. Yeah, we learned in a braita. Yeah, they changed it to the Tanya, not the Taran. The Taran is a Mishnah. Harei alai ki bechor. If a person comes and he says that he's going to become like a bechor, remember that a bechor be'emat me'ah, if it's a zachar, right? He's kadosh b'gdushat aguf, and he's brought to the mizbeach, right? So imagine a person comes and he says he's going to be like a bechor. Right? Sorry, Harei alai ki bechor means that this piece of bread is going to be like a bechor. Rabbi Yaakov says you're not allowed to benefit from the piece of bread. Rabbi Yosef says it's going to be mutar. So says the Gemara, my love Rabbi Yehuda, Savalak Rabbi Yaakov, isn't it going to be the Rabbi Yehuda that he holds Areni Nazir Keshimshon? It's going to be Chal Nazirut, and that's why he holds like Rabbi Yaakov. Right? That if a person comes and he says, Harei alai ki bechor, it's like a bechor. The Amar lo ba'in davar nidar, that you don't need something which is going to become nidar, which means that you don't need to grab it onto something which is going to be brought to the mizbeach, right? Rabbi Shimon, and according to Rabbi Shimon, he holds like Rabbi Yosef, that he says bayin davar nidar, which means you have to take it on something which is going to be prohibited because of the neder, and not something which is a sur on itself, and therefore you cannot accept upon yourself Nazirut Shimshon because it wasn't done through a human being. Meaning Nazirut Shimshon was not done through a human being. Okay, so he says no. You always need that it has to be on something which is davar nidor and not something which is a sur. Shanaga bechor, bechor is something special. Tichtiv be'ez, it's written by bechor, ish idor neder la Hashem. When it says the word la Hashem, it's extra. That a bot bechor, which is coming to teach you that even though it's going to be able to grab onto something, even of a bechor, which is kadosh me'elav, meaning like this. There's a big difference between a bechor and anything else. Anything else, you have to make it holy. How do you make it holy? Whether it's your utterance, whether it's you bringing it to the Beit HaMikdash, you make it holy. A bechor, do you need to make it holy? It's born holy. It's born that way. You don't need to do anything. It's born. It's a firstborn. Come on, kadosh. So therefore, it's not. You don't have to make it.
By definition?
Yes.
He's more kadosh than the number two?
Of course. Also bechor adam. What if to do pidyon ben? I'm a bechor. What if to do pidyon ben? It's automatic. The second that you're born, you become automatically. So you have to do pidyon ben. You become automatically kadosh, right? Automatic. It's something automatic. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. It's done automatic. What do you do pidyon ben? Pidyon ben is only in the bechor, not on anybody else.
I know, but what's the kesha with the fact that he's kadosh?
Because since he's kadosh, you have to redeem him. Because if not, right? If not, then he belongs to the kohanim. Yeah, that's the pidyon. The pidyon is because he's kadosh, right? You have to remember that before the entire concept of kohanim and levim, who are the ones that were supposed to do the avodah, the bechors. Why the bechors? because they are kadosh me'alehem. They become holy automatically.
Bechor of Kohanim or
Any bechor.
any Bechor?
Any bechor. The opposite. Bechor of Kohanim, you don't do pidyon.
Yeah.
Or of Levi.
Nachon.
Okay? So says the Gemara. So he comes and he says there's a special learning by La Hashem. The fact that it says La Hashem comes teach you that a bechor is special, that even though automatically you become kadosh, which is the bechor, here it's still going to be chal. Rabbi Yosef, and according to Rabbi Yosef, Elmaleh is going to tell you, La Hashem, there it's going to teach you the even a chatat and asham, which means even though a person cannot bring a chatat and asham, right, unless you're obligated in it. Remember, there's such a concept as a present, an nedava. You could bring any korban as a nedava, except for a chatat and an asham. Why? A chatat is a sin offering, and asham is a guilt offering. You cannot bring a sin offering or guilt offering as a present, because it's like a slap in the face. It's like, Hashem, I'm going to bring you a present. What's a present? That I sinned against you. It's a present to Hashem. You don't sin.
He has to say.
So therefore, well,
the
obviously,
animal is different.
right? Oh, no. But even if he says it doesn't help, because a person cannot bring a chatat and asham unless you're obligated in it. You cannot bring a nedava, a chatat and asham, because it's like a slap in the face. You can't do that. So he comes and he says, when it says La Hashem, the word La Hashem comes and teaches us that it's coming to include a chatat and asham, that even though they do not come as a neder or nedava, mean you cannot give a present or you cannot give a neder, a chatat and asham. But still, what are you going to come and say? That it's still going to be chal. So he comes and he says like this. He says, Ma ra'ita lerabot chatat v'asham ulotzi et ha-bechor. Why are you coming to include chatat and asham and taking out the bechor? Marbe'ani chatat v'asham. So he answers, I'm going to add the chatat v'asham shekem matpisam beneder. At the end of the day, right, it could be nitpas beneder. What does that mean? When you say this is my chatat or this is my asham, it is going to be considered good, but this is going to exclude the bechor. That it doesn't help. Meaning like this, the bechor is the bechor. I have no choice, right? Not because all of a sudden a beautiful bechor, I'm going to say, no, you know what? I'm going to give another animal. No, it doesn't exist. The bechor is a bechor. Doesn't matter. Chatat and asham, I'm the one that's kovea. You're right. I cannot bring it as a present or as a neder or nedava, but I can make it this into the chatat and asham. I say this animal is my chatat, or this animal is my asham. So therefore comes Rabbi Yosef and he says, that's why I'm going to add in from the word La Hashem, I'm going to add in the chatat and asham, but I'm going to exclude the bechor. Rabbi Yaakov, and Rabbi Yaakov, Elmaleh is going to tell you, bechor nami matpiso benederu. It's also going to be matpis beneder. The time was learned in the Braita shel bet Rabbeinu Amru, and the Talmidei of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, they said, Minayin lenolad lo bechor betoch edro, shemitzvah alav lagdisho. How do we know that if a person is going to be born a bechor inside of his cattle, how do we know that there's a mitzvah to still sanctify the bechor? It says kol bechor zachar takdish, which means even though he's kadosh me'elav, kadosh automatically without your intervention, still it's considered davar nadur because we want you to come and to sanctify the bechor. Even though it's already kadosh, we want you to put an input. And it's not enough automatic. We still want you to do it. Okay? So now we're going back to the Nezirut Shimshon. He says, 1 second. If you just told me now that it's written to do with the concept of La Hashem, and whether it's you're adding in the Chatat Vasham, or you're adding in the Bechor, whichever one that you want, the Machloket, right between them. At the end of the day, also by Nazir, it's written La Hashem. So see if it's written by La Hashem, by the Nazir. So therefore, the question that we're going to ask ourselves is was it says Ki afli lindor neder Nazir La Hashem. So it's written also La Hashem by the Nazir. So why does he say that also this word should be matfis, the rabot Nezirut Shimshon? So he says, Haumi Baile, he means the Tanya, that which we learned in a Braita, right? That we say in a Braita, Amar Shimon HaTzadik, listen to this. This is a very famous Gemara. Says Shimon HaTzadik, remember Shimon HaTzadik was for 40 years Kohen Gadol, right? Shimon HaTzadik, Haya Mishire Knesset HaGedolah, Hu Haya Omer, Ya Pirkei Avot, Perek Aleph. So he says, Shimon HaTzadik, Mi'amai lo achalti Asham Nazir Tameh. I never ate the Asham of a Nazir Tameh, except for one person that I came and I did it. Yeah, he says, who was it? He came from the south. He was very handsome. He had beautiful eyes. He was good looking. He had mamash taltalim. He had like this, like braids in his hair, like mamash, handsome guy. Amarti lo, I told him, Beni, why did you want to come and start destroying your hair? Because remember, at the end of the Nazirut, right? It's very nice. You're leaving your hair long. But at the end of the Nazirut, you shave. You go bald. So what's going on now? Amali told me, I was a shepherd to my father in my city. And I went and I got water from the springs, right? And all of a sudden I looked at myself in the image. I looked at myself, right? And then my Yitzhak started grabbing me. My Yitzhak started telling me, look how handsome you are. You can get whoever that you want. You could do whatever that you want. So he wanted to get rid of me from this world. He wanted to destroy me, my Yitzhak. Amarti lo, I told my Yetzirah, Reka, empty one. What are you coming and being haughty in a world that's not yours? That at the end you're just going to be used for the worms. That's all you're going to be. For the worms, for this, that's what you're going to be. Ha'avodah, he swore, he's going to accept upon himself Nazirut, and he's going to cut off all his hair, the Shem Mitzvah. I got up and I kissed him on his head. And I told him, there should be so many of Nazirim like you in Israel. On you, the Torah says, what does that mean? That it's done la Hashem. La Hashem means it's done l'shem shamayim. That's what it means, la Hashem. That it's fitting to be mekabel the Nazirut, l'shem shamayim. Not just because you want to have nice long hair and I don't know what. Okay, fine. So because of that, the word La Hashem is coming to teach you that it should be L'Shem Shemaim. Not that the word La Hashem comes to teach you that even though it's going to be Nitpas, even though it's like Davar Nidar or not. L'Shimshon Lam Naziru. So says the Gemara, one second. Let's go back. Shimshon, he's not considered Nazir. What's going on? You just told me that according to one Shita, Shimshon was allowed to be Metamemetim. And then according to another Shita, there was no Nazirut at all because it was a Malach. It wasn't even himself. So what's going on? Right? It's written, he's going to be a Nazir Elokim from the stomach, from the womb. He's going to be Nazir Elokim. So answers the Gemara, yeah, but there was a Malach that said it. And the fact that it was a Malach that said it, and he was the one that was Koveah, Nazirim Shimshon was never considered Neder Adam. So says the Gemara, so how do you know that he was Metamemetim? Right? Is going to be he wrote, right? Belechi Achamor, he keti elefish, that with the lechi of the Chamor, he came and he hit 1,000 people. Dilma Garuya got to do. Maybe Be'emet, he threw it at them. Meaning, he never actually came and killed them physically with a thing. He was using it like as a boomerang, or as like an arrow. He came, but from far. That's how he killed them. No, he never touched them. So it says the Gemara, it says in the Pasuk, he killed them, and then he took off their clothing after death. And therefore he was tameh nitma, tamemet. So you see from here, that obviously he was actually touching their bodies. So Dilma Shlachinan Bereisha says maybe by Met he first stripped them of their clothing, and then he killed them. Maybe he took off their clothing and then afterwards he killed them. So it says the Gemara, no, it's written first that he hit them, and then it's written that he took the clothing, not the opposite way around. So it says the Gemara, okay, maybe he made them into goses, meaning he hit them, they were still alive but they were dying. He took off their clothing. And then, right, they died. So it says, no, we have a tradition. A Kabbalah Masora Biadenu, that he was mitamemet the entire time. So where's it written by Nazir Olam that it's going to be mutar? Right? So therefore, from here, by the way, we learned that the Nazir Shimshon, he's allowed to become mitamemet. So it says the Gemara, Nazir Olam Echaktiv, where's it written by Nazir Olam that he's allowed to cut off a little bit of his hair when it's too heavy, and then he brings the korbanot. The Tanya was learned to write to Rabbi Rabbi says, Avshalom was a Nazir Olam. Avshalom, the son of David HaMelech, was a Nazir Olam. Shneimar says the pasuk, Vayim miketz 40 shana, was at the end of 40 years. Yom Avshalom el Melech lichana v'shalem et nidri Hashem dati l'Hashem echevru megaleach echad l'shtem chodesh. He's going to come and he's going to cut his hair once every 12 months. Shneimar says the pasuk, Vayam miketz yamim layamin. So the kavanah was for 1 year. And he used to come and cut his hair once a year, right? Because he was considered a Nazir Olam. V'yalif yamim. Says we learn yamim from Batei Choma. Mahatam, just like over there, Shnei Masar Chodesh, it's going to be 12 months, right? Because that's the way it is from Batei Choma. Batei Choma, you're allowed to come and redeem. Remember that a regular city, when you come and you sell a regular city, it's theirs. It's theirs to keep until Yovel. Yovel comes back to you automatically. What about Batei Choma? Batei Choma, walled cities, you only have a year to redeem it. after that year, Kaddish, you lose it completely. So therefore, we learn, right? Yamim Yamim. Just like over there, it's going to be 12 Chodesh, so 2 years, it's going to be 12 Chodesh, which means he was cutting his hair once every 12 months.